Welcome to InfoStream, your daily current. Unsure what to listen to? Turn to us for today's headlines. Stay informed. Netanyahu plans full Gaza occupation. Pressure mounts on Israeli leadership. Gaza crisis appears irreversible. El-Fasher faces starvation due to Sudan conflict. UN seeks plastics treaty solution. 9 kidnapped from Haitian orphanage. Bolsonaro held under house arrest in Brazil. Obama officials investigated in U.S. probe. House committee demands Epstein file access. Texas redistricting intensifies political battles. Trump-Putin relations deteriorate. Trump threatens tariffs on India. Trump removes BLS commissioner. U.S. to increase security checks with visa bonds. Confederate statue to be reinstated in Bondi. Netanyahu considers full Gaza occupation amidst rising pressure. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu is contemplating a full reoccupation of the Gaza Strip, a move driven by escalating domestic pressure, particularly from the families of the approximately 49 remaining hostages, and international calls for a ceasefire. Following reports of a planned security cabinet meeting, Netanyahu intends to order the Israeli army to conquer the entire Gaza Strip, expanding the conflict beyond current operational zones. This plan aims to secure the release of the hostages and address perceived future threats emanating from Gaza. The proposal faces significant opposition, both domestically and internationally. Within Israel, retired security officials, including former intelligence chiefs, have urged Netanyahu to end the war, arguing that Israel has already achieved a military victory and should prioritize hostage negotiations. Simultaneously, the Palestinian Authority and Hamas have rejected the proposal, maintaining their stance on ceasefire talks. Hamas insists that the onus is on Israel and the United States to conclude an agreement. The situation is further complicated by the dire humanitarian conditions in Gaza, with over 933 Palestinians killed and 2.4 million people facing famine, according to Hamas-run health ministry figures. International organizations and UN officials have repeatedly criticized Israel's actions, alleging impediments to aid distribution and accusing the country of exacerbating the crisis. To address the humanitarian situation and bolster his political position, Netanyahu is exploring a strategy to partially reopen private sector trade with Gaza, utilizing monitored bank transfers and stringent security inspections to prevent Hamas involvement. This initiative aims to reduce reliance on UN and international aid airdrops. Amidst this escalating scenario, Israel's diplomatic efforts are focused on securing international attention on the hostage issue, with Foreign Minister Gideon Sa'ar participating in a UN Security Council meeting. The move reflects a strategic shift to leverage international pressure, while simultaneously pursuing military objectives. The core issues remain the release of hostages, the cessation of hostilities, and alleviating the devastating humanitarian crisis in Gaza, a complex web of political and strategic considerations. Global News Digest Humanitarian Crisis and Diverse Developments. Recent developments across the globe highlight a multifaceted situation involving a deepening humanitarian crisis in Gaza, coupled with significant cultural and political shifts. A core element of the current narrative revolves around accusations leveled by families against Hamas regarding the treatment of Israeli hostages. Specifically, the brother of Aviatar David shared a harrowing account with the BBC, detailing a video purportedly released by Hamas depicting his sibling as a human skeleton, fueling concerns about the group's actions and the well-being of those held captive. This revelation coincides with Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's anticipated expansion of military operations within Gaza, signaling an escalation of the ongoing conflict. Beyond the immediate crisis in the Middle East, a notable passing occurred with the death of Britain's first female spy chief, Stella Remington, marking the end of a distinguished career in intelligence. Her legacy as a pioneering figure in British intelligence remains significant. Furthermore, a new social trend is emerging in India. Elaborate staged wedding ceremonies, a phenomenon gaining considerable traction and generating media attention. The Global News Podcast continues to provide comprehensive coverage, delivering breaking news and in-depth analysis across a broad spectrum of topics. The podcast's commitment to timely updates, encompassing politics, economics, climate change, business, technology, and health, ensures listeners remain informed on critical global events. Its frequent updates, delivered twice daily on weekdays and daily at weekends, supplemented by bonus episodes reacting to urgent breaking stories, guarantees continuous access to the most relevant information. The podcast actively encourages audience engagement through its contact email address, globalpodcastbbc.co, fostering a connection between the news source and its listeners. Crisis in Gaza seems hopeless. A pathway to a 90-day solution in Gaza. The current situation in Gaza, characterized by a seemingly intractable conflict and a humanitarian crisis, demands immediate action. Brett McGurk, a CN Global Affairs analyst and former national security advisor, highlights the urgent need to end the war, secure the release of hostages, and establish a long-term recovery for Gaza under a non-Hamas government. The failure of a 60-day ceasefire deal, brokered with Qatari and Egyptian mediation, underscores the complexities of the conflict. The deal collapsed due to Hamas's reluctance to accept terms, particularly regarding the release of hostages held within Gaza. Israel and the U.S. withdrew from the negotiations, leading to a worsening humanitarian situation exacerbated by Israel's blockade and a prolonged humanitarian crisis. France and the UK proposed initiatives to recognize a Palestinian state, but these have inadvertently removed pressure on Hamas to negotiate. Several potential pathways to resolution are being considered. A military victory, involving intensified Israeli operations, is viewed as unlikely to succeed and carries significant strategic risks. A comprehensive deal, demanding the return of all hostages and a full withdrawal from Gaza, is considered improbable due to Hamas's demands and potential for further deadlock. A 60-day proposal, which remains the most viable option, hinges on Hamas releasing 10 hostages to extend the ceasefire. A unilateral humanitarian pause, combined with an ultimatum demanding the release of hostages, offers a pragmatic approach. This strategy would alleviate the immediate humanitarian crisis, refocus international attention on Hamas, and potentially parry the French and UK initiatives. Ultimately, the most effective solution involves a combination of these approaches. Specifically, Option 6C, a 30-day pause in Israeli military operations coupled with an ultimatum demanding the release of half the remaining hostages. If Hamas fails to comply, Israel can resume military operations, and the recognition of a Palestinian state can be reconsidered. This approach prioritizes the immediate humanitarian needs, places responsibility squarely on Hamas, and offers a realistic path toward ending the conflict and securing the release of hostages. The urgency of the situation demands decisive action, and Option 6 represents the most viable strategy to achieve this goal. El-Fasher faces imminent starvation amidst Sudan's civil war. The ongoing civil war in Sudan, now in its third year, has created a severe humanitarian crisis, most acutely felt in the besieged city of El-Fasher. The city, home to approximately 300,000 residents, is encircled by Rapid Support Forces, RSF paramilitary fighters who have been attempting to seize control from Sudan's army for nearly 16 months. Widespread starvation is being reported, with local activists documenting deaths due to lack of food. The World Food Programme, WFP, has been unable to deliver food to El-Fasher by road for over a year, exacerbated by the RSF's disruption of trade routes and supply lines. A significant portion of the population, particularly children under 5, suffers from acute malnutrition, with 38% of those in internally displaced person camps exhibiting this condition. Food prices have skyrocketed, forcing residents to consume animal fodder and waste to survive. The UN's Children's Agency, UNICEF, highlights the pervasive malnutrition across Sudan, with many children reduced to skin and bones. The conflict, sparked in April 2023, has displaced over 1 million people from El-Fasher and surrounding areas, including those from the Zamzam camp, seized by the RSF, despite a UN-led push for a week-long humanitarian truce since early June. Following an attack on a UN convoy, the RSF has not officially responded. The RSF claims the truce would facilitate the delivery of supplies to the army, while the army, led by Gen Abdel Fattah al-Burhan, has agreed to the temporary ceasefire. The WFP has prepared food and nutrition assistance, awaiting clearance from the RSF to proceed. However, fragile gains in delivering aid to other parts of Darfur are threatened by the approaching rainy season. While conditions are slowly improving in central Sudan due to the Sudanese army's removal of RSF fighters, resources remain critically stretched due to recent funding cuts. The situation is described as a looming catastrophe, with the potential for irreversible damage to a generation of children if aid access isn't secured urgently. The BBC reports first-hand accounts of desperate flight from intensified bombing and attacks by RSF-allied gangs, emphasizing the urgent need for access to these vulnerable populations. UN attempts to forge plastics treaty amidst global crisis. International negotiations are underway in Geneva, Switzerland, aiming to finalize a legally binding global treaty to combat the escalating plastic pollution crisis. Following 5 rounds of unsuccessful talks in Busan, South Korea, where oil-producing nations blocked ambitious production limits, a renewed effort is focused on achieving a consensus among over 170 participating countries. The urgency is underscored by mounting evidence of plastic's pervasive impact, now found in environments from deep ocean trenches to mountaintops, and even within human bodies. The core challenge revolves around balancing the demands of major plastic producers, primarily oil-producing states, who advocate for prioritizing waste management and recycling overproduction restrictions, with concerns about economic repercussions. Alongside the push for a comprehensive agreement encompassing significant reductions in plastic production and the elimination of harmful chemicals, the presence of over 600 NGOs and civil society groups highlights the multifaceted nature of the issue, with key debates centering on the phasing out of specific toxic substances and the establishment of robust financial mechanisms to support the transition to a plastic-free future. A central element of the negotiations involves the symbolic display of a replica of Auguste Rodin's The Thinker, gradually being submerged in plastic waste, a visual representation of the crisis. Scientists warn that microplastics pose a serious health risk, estimated to cost the global economy at least $1.5 trillion annually due to associated health problems. The Lancet Medical Journal's recent report reinforces this concern, comparing plastic pollution to air pollution and lead, emphasizing the need for preventative measures. Despite the significant obstacles, negotiators remain optimistic, recognizing the shared responsibility to address this global challenge. The goal is to establish clear targets for plastic production, promote the design of more recyclable products, and secure funding for waste management and recycling infrastructure. The Business Coalition, representing major plastic users like Nestle and Unilever, is calling for coordinated taxes to finance these efforts. The ultimate aim is to prevent the continued accumulation of plastic waste and mitigate its detrimental effects on ecosystems and human health. The negotiations are expected to continue for 10 days, with a focus on achieving a legally binding agreement that represents a significant step forward in tackling the global plastic pollution crisis. 9 people, including Irish Missionary, kidnapped from Haiti Orphanage. A crisis unfolded in Haiti with the kidnapping of 9 individuals, including an Irish missionary and a 3-year-old child, from the Saint-Hel Orphanage near Port-au-Prince. The orphanage, run by the international humanitarian organization Nos Petits Frères et Espéreurs, cares for over 240 children, many with special needs. The attack occurred early Sunday morning, escalating a long-standing problem of gang violence and kidnappings in the country. Jenna Harity, the orphanage's director and a key figure in Haiti since 1993, was among those taken. She previously faced threats and violence in 2013 when suspects attacked the orphanage, resulting in the death of a colleague. Her family expressed absolute devastation and described the situation as evolving and deeply worrying. Authorities swiftly relocated the remaining children and staff to ensure their safety. The attack highlights the precarious security situation in Haiti, where armed gangs control approximately 85% of the city and are responsible for numerous kidnappings and violent acts. The United States has designated a powerful gang federation, Viv-Ansam, as a foreign terrorist organization, further emphasizing the severity of the crisis. The incident echoes a 2021 kidnapping of 17 missionaries, including 5 children, by the 400 Mawazo gang. This previous event lasted 61 days, demonstrating the challenges faced by international aid workers in Haiti. The current crisis underscores the vulnerability of humanitarian organizations and the urgent need for a stable and secure environment. Simon Harris, Ireland's Deputy Prime Minister, expressed deep concern and called for the immediate release of the hostages. The situation is compounded by the high number of kidnappings reported in Haiti, with over 175 people abducted from April to the end of June this year, primarily attributed to the Grand Ravine and Village du Dieu gangs within the Viv-Ansam Federation. The ongoing violence and instability present a significant obstacle to humanitarian efforts and the well-being of the children residing at the orphanage. Efforts are underway to secure the safe return of the hostages and provide support to the affected community. Brazilian judge places ex-President Bolsonaro under house arrest. Former Brazilian President Jair Bolsonaro is under house arrest following a ruling by a Brazilian judge, Alexandre de Moraes, due to repeated violations of a social media ban imposed during his trial over alleged attempts to overturn the 2022 presidential election results and incite a coup. The judge deemed Bolsonaro's disregard for previous restrictions, including the use of his sons and allies to disseminate messages online, as a deliberate attempt to undermine the judicial process. This escalation marks a significant confrontation between Brazil's judiciary and the far-right politician. The trial centers on accusations that Bolsonaro and his associates attempted to disrupt the legal proceedings and maintain power after losing the election to President Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva. As part of the restrictions, Bolsonaro was initially ordered to wear an ankle bracelet and be prohibited from using social media. The judge's decision to place Bolsonaro under house arrest stems from his continued defiance of these orders, particularly a live broadcast featuring a call between Bolsonaro and his son at a pro-Bolsonaro rally in Rio de Janeiro, which bypassed the established restrictions. The United States has also become deeply involved, with U.S. President Donald Trump imposing a 50% tariff on Brazilian goods following the trial, and sanctioning Justice Moraes for what he described as a witch hunt. This action has further strained relations between the two countries. The U.S. State Department has condemned the House arrest and vowed to hold accountable those aiding in the alleged sanctioned conduct. Bolsonaro's supporters have welcomed Trump's intervention, and some demonstrators waved U.S. flags at rallies expressing their support. The former president himself has been restricted from public appearances during the trial. The legal proceedings are expected to conclude within the coming weeks, with Bolsonaro potentially facing a substantial prison sentence. Justice Moraes has become a target of animosity from the Brazilian and American right due to his pursuit of Bolsonaro. The situation highlights a significant political and legal battle within Brazil, with international implications. Bondi orders grand jury probe into Obama officials over Russia investigation. The U.S. Attorney General Pam Bondi has ordered federal prosecutors to initiate a grand jury investigation into accusations surrounding the Obama administration's alleged involvement in fabricating intelligence regarding Russia's interference in the 2016 presidential election. This action follows a referral from Director of National Intelligence Tulsi Gabbard, who recently declassified documents she claims undermine the Obama administration's previous conclusions. Gabbard's referral centers on the assertion that Democratic officials deliberately manufactured false allegations of collusion between Donald Trump's 2016 campaign and the Russian government. The grand jury, comprised of selected members of the public, will have the authority to subpoena witnesses and gather evidence, potentially leading to formal charges if the Justice Department decides to pursue a criminal case. The investigation will specifically target former President Barack Obama and senior officials within his administration. The core of the inquiry revolves around the debate over the extent to which Russia's attempts to influence the election, including hacking and disinformation campaigns, were intentionally used to benefit Hillary Clinton's campaign. This development builds upon the ongoing scrutiny of the Trump-Russia investigation, which began during Trump's presidency and culminated in the Mueller report, which found no evidence of coordination between Trump's campaign and the Kremlin. Despite the Mueller report's findings, the debate continues regarding the motivations behind the initial intelligence assessments and the subsequent allegations of a deliberate effort to smear Trump. The Justice Department's formation of a strike force to analyze the evidence presented by Gabbard further underscores the seriousness with which the allegations are being treated. The investigation's potential outcome remains uncertain, but it represents a renewed attempt to revisit key aspects of the 2016 election and the subsequent scrutiny of Trump's actions. House Oversight Committee subpoenas Justice Department for Epstein files, high-profile former officials for depositions. The House Oversight Committee has initiated a significant investigation into the Jeffrey Epstein case, issuing subpoenas to the Justice Department and numerous high-profile former officials, including attorneys general and FBI directors, seeking access to files and demanding depositions. The committee's actions reflect growing Republican calls for greater transparency surrounding the case and the administration's handling of information related to Epstein and his associate, Ghislaine Maxwell. The subpoenas target figures such as Merrick Garland, William Barr, Jeff Sessions, Loretta Lynch, Eric Holder, Alberto Gonzalez, James Comey, Robert Mueller III, Hillary Clinton, and Bill Clinton. The committee's aim is to oversee the federal government's response to the investigation and prosecution of Epstein and Maxwell. After Trump administration debating releasing transcript of Ghislaine Maxwell's DOJ interview, sources say. Concurrent with the congressional investigation, the Trump administration is considering releasing a transcript of an audio recording of an interview conducted by the Justice Department with Ghislaine Maxwell. 3 senior administration officials indicated this decision was being debated, acknowledging the need for transparency amid scrutiny of the administration's handling of the Epstein case. The interview was conducted by Deputy Attorney General Todd Blanche at the U.S. Attorney's Office in Tallahassee, Florida, last month. The decision to potentially release the transcript stems from pressure to be more transparent and follows a series of unusual developments, including Maxwell's recent transfer to a minimum security federal prison camp in Texas. As Ghislaine Maxwell's prison transfer adds to Trump's Epstein morass. The transfer of Maxwell from a Florida federal prison to Camp Bryan in Texas has further complicated the situation. The reasons for the transfer remain unclear, with no official explanation offered by the Justice Department, Bureau of Prisons, or Maxwell's lawyer. The move has fueled speculation and intensified scrutiny of the Trump administration's handling of the case, particularly given Trump's repeated claims of ignorance regarding Epstein's activities and his prior association with the financier. The administration's actions, including sending Blanche to interview Maxwell and its reluctance to fully disclose information, have been criticized as lacking transparency and contributing to the ongoing confusion surrounding the Epstein investigation. The timeline of events, including the administration's initial promises of full disclosure and its subsequent reversals, has added to the perception of a deliberate obfuscation. Texas redistricting battle, a multi-front political struggle, the escalating conflict surrounding Texas's legislative session, centered on proposed congressional map changes, has rapidly become a pivotal moment in American politics, impacting electoral strategies and broader democratic concerns. At the core of the dispute is a Republican-led effort to redraw district lines, potentially favoring the GOP and solidifying their control over the House of Representatives. Democrats, facing a significant uphill battle, have responded with a strategic exodus from Texas, disrupting the legislative session and triggering daily fines for non-attendance. Key figures involved include Texas Governor Greg Abbott, a staunch ally of Donald Trump, and Democratic state representatives Greg Casar and Lloyd Doggett, who are now facing potential primary challenges. Simultaneously, Democratic governors like Kathy Hochul and Gavin Newsom have pledged to emulate Texas's actions, aiming to create new Democratic-friendly seats in their respective states. The situation's national implications are considerable. The Texas battle directly affects the Democrats' prospects of regaining control of the House, where a net gain of 3 seats is necessary. The conflict has reignited debates about gerrymandering and the role of partisan influence in electoral districts. Furthermore, the Texas dispute underscores a broader trend of Democratic erosion, marked by Trump's attempts to subvert electoral norms and consolidate power. The strategic departure of Democratic lawmakers is intended to pressure Republicans and highlight the stakes of the battle. Democrats are attempting to frame the Texas situation as a defense of democracy, linking it to broader concerns about upholding democratic principles. However, the practical challenges are significant, including the daily fines and the potential for primary battles. Ultimately, the Texas redistricting battle represents a multifaceted political struggle with implications for electoral outcomes, democratic norms, and the future of American politics. The actions of key players, including Governor Abbott and Democratic state representatives, are shaping the narrative and influencing the broader political landscape. The soaring of Trump-Putin relations and the possibility of a Ukraine deal. The relationship between U.S. President Donald Trump and Russian President Vladimir Putin has deteriorated significantly despite initial optimism. The current dynamic is characterized by posturing and a potential, though uncertain, path towards a negotiated settlement in Ukraine. Initially, a reboot of relations seemed likely, with a perceived alignment of interests and a willingness for meetings between the two leaders. However, this momentum has stalled due to conflicting goals and escalating pressure from Washington. Trump's approach, marked by frequent deadline changes and increasingly critical statements regarding Russia's actions, contrasts sharply with Putin's unwavering stance. Trump has issued ultimatums, threatened sanctions, and targeted Russia's trade partners, while Putin remains committed to continuing the special military operation and demanding Ukraine's neutrality and limitations on its military capabilities. Steve Witkoff, Trump's special envoy, has played a crucial role, holding multiple meetings with Putin and receiving a symbolic portrait as a gesture of goodwill. Despite this engagement, the core disagreements persist. Trump's frustration with Putin's reluctance to accept a ceasefire has led to fluctuating deadlines and heightened rhetoric. Analysts suggest that Putin views the situation as an opportunity to demonstrate Russia's strength and challenge Western influence, while Trump seeks to secure a deal that benefits the U.S. economically and politically. The potential for a breakthrough hinges on whether Putin is willing to compromise on key demands, a prospect currently deemed unlikely. Despite the strained relations, there remains a possibility of a negotiated settlement. Witkoff's upcoming visit to Russia is seen as a key moment, with predictions that he may present offers of cooperation that could incentivize a shift in Putin's position. However, the fundamental obstacles, Ukraine's territorial demands, its neutrality, and the size of its future army remain significant hurdles. The situation remains complex, with Trump prioritizing a deal and Putin aiming for victory, creating a volatile and unpredictable dynamic. Ultimately, the future of the U.S.-Russia relationship and the resolution of the Ukraine conflict depend on a delicate balance of power and a willingness to compromise, a factor that currently appears distant. Trump threatens tariffs on India over Russian oil purchases. President Donald Trump has announced his intention to substantially raise tariffs on India due to its continued purchases of Russian oil. This action follows previous threats of a 25% tariff and reflects a growing tension between the two nations regarding their trade relationship and India's strategic energy sourcing. Trump contends that India is profiting from the sale of Russian oil on the open market, a claim disputed by New Delhi. India's decision to import Russian oil stemmed from a global energy market disruption caused by Western sanctions following Russia's invasion of Ukraine. Traditional supply routes were diverted to Europe, leaving India to secure alternative sources to maintain affordable energy costs for its consumers. The Indian Ministry of External Affairs emphasized this necessity, stating that the imports were driven by the global market situation and aimed at ensuring predictable energy prices. The United States and the European Union are also engaged in trade with Russia, a point highlighted by India as justification for its actions. India argues that it is being unfairly targeted while simultaneously facing similar trade relationships with Russia. India's foreign ministry asserted that the targeting is unjustified and unreasonable, and that the country will take necessary measures to protect its national interests and economic security. Trump's tariff threat comes as he has intensified pressure on Russian President Vladimir Putin to agree to a ceasefire with Ukraine by August 8th. Kremlin spokesman Dmitry Peskov dismissed the U.S. plan as a threat and asserted that sovereign countries have the right to choose their own trading partners. The situation underscores a broader geopolitical struggle, with the U.S. seeking to isolate Russia economically, while India pursues its own strategic interests. Both sides remain committed to their positions, creating a volatile and uncertain trade landscape. The upcoming visit by U.S. envoy Steve Witkoff to Russia is expected to further complicate the situation. Trump fires BLS commissioner amid job number revisions. President Donald Trump's decision to fire the head of the Bureau of Labor Statistics, a BLS Erika Mentarfer, stemmed from significant revisions to the monthly jobs report, particularly concerning the July figures. The revisions, totaling 258,000 over 2 months, represented the largest change since 2020 and triggered a political firestorm. Trump's justification centered on the perception that the revisions were politically motivated, despite explanations from the BLS attributing the changes to lower survey response rates and the inherent challenges of compiling preliminary estimates. The BLS commissioner's role is primarily to review the final press release before publication, a process that doesn't involve direct control over the data collection or analysis. Former commissioners emphasize that the commissioner's authority is limited, and the revisions are a standard part of the monthly reporting process. Initial estimates, considered a quick but lower resolution snapshot, are subsequently adjusted as more complete data becomes available. The controversy ignited due to the magnitude of the revisions, with Trump's administration seeking to discredit the data and suggest bias. Critics argue that the firing of Mentarfer undermines confidence in critical economic data and could negatively impact investment decisions. Several economists and statisticians defended Mentarfer, highlighting the challenges of obtaining accurate data in a changing economic landscape. Mentarfer herself acknowledged the difficulties in maintaining robust survey response rates, emphasizing the need to modernize statistical methods. The decision to oust Mentarfer was largely driven by Trump's frustration with the July jobs report, which showed a significant slowdown in hiring, and his broader skepticism about the Federal Reserve's policies, particularly Jerome Powell's decisions regarding interest rates. White House officials attempted to frame the situation as a correction of perceived bias, though the evidence supporting this claim remains disputed. The controversy extended beyond the immediate personnel change, raising broader questions about the independence of government statistical agencies and the potential for political interference in economic data collection. The firing of Mentarfer has prompted concern among experts that the decision could damage the credibility of the BLS and its crucial role in informing economic policy. Several members of Congress expressed reservations about the move, emphasizing the importance of maintaining public trust in economic data. The situation underscores the ongoing tension between political leadership and the pursuit of objective, reliable economic information. U.S. to implement visa bond system for increased security checks. The United States is set to introduce a pilot program requiring foreign visitors seeking tourist or business visas from designated countries to pay bonds ranging from $5,000 to $15,000. This initiative, announced by the State Department, aims to address concerns regarding visa overstays and insufficient screening processes. The program's primary goal is to enhance national security by ensuring visitors comply with their visa terms and preventing unauthorized extended stays. The State Department's decision stems from a recognition of a potential national security threat posed by visa overstays. Data from the Department of Homeland Security indicates that over 500 Zalahars and individuals admitted through ports of entry remained in the country beyond the expiration of their visas in 2023. This prompted a reevaluation of previously discouraged practices, such as requiring visa bonds. The pilot program will initially target countries identified based on high visa overstay rates, and where screening and vetting information is deemed deficient. The Department of Homeland Security will determine the specific countries involved, publishing the list prior to the program's implementation. The amount of the bond will be determined by consular officers at the time of visa issuance. The program's implementation will involve designated airports participating in the scheme, with details to be announced 15 days before the bonds come into effect. Consular officers will retain the authority to impose bonds, a power previously rarely utilized due to perceived logistical difficulties. This initiative represents a shift in strategy, testing the feasibility of using bonds as a deterrent and security measure. The program's 12-month duration allows for assessment and refinement. Previously, the Trump administration attempted a similar program during its first term, but it was halted due to the pandemic's disruption of international travel. The State Department aims to address past assumptions about the practicality of bond payments, seeking to establish a more robust system for verifying visitor compliance and safeguarding national security. The program's success will be measured by its ability to reduce visa overstays and improve the effectiveness of screening processes. NPS to reinstall toppled Confederate statue, the National Park Service. The NPS has announced its intention to restore and reinstall a statue of Confederate General Albert Pike in Washington, D.C., following its removal by protesters in 2020. This decision aligns with directives issued by the Trump administration, specifically an executive order focused on beautifying the District of Columbia and another aimed at restoring truth and sanity to American history. The NPS stated that the statue's restoration is part of a broader effort to address what the administration views as a distortion of American history. The statue, the sole memorial to a Confederate general within the U.S. Capitol, was targeted during the widespread racial justice protests sparked by the death of George Floyd in 2020. President Donald Trump, then in office, condemned the statue's toppling and called for its immediate arrest of those involved. The NPS anticipates completing the restoration and reinstallment by October 2025. The statue, erected in 1901 by the Freemasons, honors Pike's contributions to the organization. However, his legacy is controversial, with allegations of involvement with the Ku Klux Klan adding to the debate surrounding his memorialization. Critics argue that the statue represents a symbol of racism and the Confederacy's defense of slavery. Rep. Eleanor Holmes Norton, who represents Washington, D.C., strongly opposes the reinstallation, stating that it is odd and indefensible, and that Pike served dishonorably. She intends to reintroduce a bill to permanently remove the statue and authorize the Interior Secretary to donate it to a museum or another entity. The NPS decision reflects a shift in policy under the Trump administration, prioritizing the restoration of historical monuments and challenging what the administration perceives as a biased interpretation of American history. The restoration project is underway, and the NPS aims to complete the reinstallment by October 2025.